Today I'm at the New World Symphony in one of the rehearsal rooms with this nice C7. It has an unusual situation with the dampers and the way that they lift to the key and the pedal. Let's get into it and I'll show you what's going on. And you can see here, when I lift the pedal, everything seems okay. When I play one of the keys, right, that seems normal. It's a little early feeling. It's hard to see, but I can feel it in the key that it's early. Now when I lift the dampers out of the way with the pedal and I raise the key right there, it's okay if there's a little wink of damper movement at the end of the keystroke, but this coincides with the let-off, the moment of let-off, which means that you've got the let-off, you've got the drop screw, and now you have the weight of the damper lever right at that moment. And that's a problem for pianists. If you have the pedal down and you're doing scales at a soft level, or anything at a soft level, the damper levers are going to be working against you, which means that you're not going to be able to play this softly very easily. The notes are going to be unpredictable. We need to correct this. So let's open her up and see what we can do. All right, so we have the piano open now. You can see the glides here. There's also, I believe, hidden ones there, and probably over here in the bass, ones underneath, which is why you have this special tool so that you can fit it underneath. We'll show you those. For each brand, there might be a slightly different methodology, but in general, you have two kind of styles. You have the barely touching style, which is what Steinway uses, so that the key frame is just barely hanging on in the center, just enough to keep it from bouncing. Yamaha does things a bit differently. Their key frame is thicker and less flexible, and it means that what they would like to do is use the studs not only to bed the frame, but to adjust the amount of touch you have in the key. And so how that factors in is if you come to a piano that doesn't have enough aftertouch in the hammer movement, or you have too much, you can adjust the glides in general up and down, which moves the key height up and down just slightly, just enough to give you that extra millimeter or half a millimeter of touch, so that the regulation cycle can complete itself and the feeling of the key after let-off is comfortable. All right, it doesn't have that shallow feeling, so that in a pinch, let's say on a concert stage, if you don't have a good amount of touch, you can just simply adjust the glides, add some extra depth in the feel of the key, or take it away, depending on the situation, and you're good. In this case, what are we doing? Right? What do we have going on when it's not so much that the key touch is a problem, although I do see that we don't have quite enough. I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, if we look in here, there's only the slightest bit of fall away, drop, and then there's almost no aftertouch. So you would think, okay, I'm going to adjust the glides up. Well, let's do that and see what we're left with. All right, so let's take a look at what we're left with now. Here's the hammer. It's got a little bit. You can see it right there. It's got a little bit left after the key. It could be deeper, but it's all right. The issue is, even with that little bit, now the damper hits the key end before the action gets through to let off. So now the problem is actually even worse. So while we've used Yamaha's own system to do what it's designed to do, right, use the glides to give us more touch, the damper situation's worse. So what this really means is that we're going to have to reset the damper lift from the key. There's always a moment where you stop and think, am I doing the right thing? Perhaps this is not the right thing. Resetting the damper lift to the key is not a trivial matter. You have to loosen all of the dampers out of their blocks, reset them, maybe end up having to do it twice. But I thought, let me look at some other factors. And one that I thought of, which is really obvious, but I should have looked at first, is really the hammer height off of the rest bumpers. If the hammers have sunken down through usage, which happens a lot, that would mean that you would actually need more key dip to get the hammer to cycle through its regulation. And as I look inside, I can see that the hammers are actually down. It would be faster to do a sample hammer, see if that gives us the right dip, readjust the keyframe, and then do all of the hammers in the hammer line up a bit if they're needed that way. Then even beginning to finish regulating all of the dampers after you've screwed them in, making sure the head's aligned to the strings. It's such a pain in the butt. So let me show you the hammer line. It's not easy to see without pulling the action out. But even from here, you can kind of tell that they're not a 1/4 inch off of the bumpers. That's just a round number, and it's, people say like a pencil thickness. Either way, it's obvious that these are low. So why don't we do a sample and see how that plays out? So I'm resetting all the glides back to 0 so that they barely touch, and as I need, I can bring them up from there to give more key touch. There's my sample hammer, which when the action's in has a healthy amount of touch. Underneath here, we've got the hidden glides. See, there's a regular one. There's the hidden glide. It's got the notches on it that are for the tool. There's one over on the base, one here in the center. Do these last. Raise them all the way up off of the key bed, do all your bedding, and then come back to these last. So I did some samples, I did some other things, and it's a little bit of everything. The pedal lift was a little shy, so the dampers weren't lifting as high as they could with the pedal, but that didn't make enough of a difference. The hammer line is low, and I was able to get more touch out of the key because I raised the hammer, giving it a sooner cycle, a quicker cycle, with more key travel left over after the hammer went through drop. That wasn't enough. I played around with the glides a little bit more to see if I could find a mix of all three. No, it needs everything. So in this instance, you've got a hammer line that's too low, a key bedding situation that wasn't right for the touch that was currently there, which will then, of course, change once we've raised the hammer line. And then ultimately, I'm going to have to go through and raise the damper lift so that the end of the keystroke just barely gets the damper lever. Here we go, another time lapse. All right, so I got the hammer line up. You can see the height of the hammer is off the rest rail now. All right, you can see there's a nice amount of clearance. Action is out. So what I do is while the action's in, I slip a damper like this underneath the front end, well, wherever there's a block felt. You obviously don't want to do this with a wedge, but this is the first one. This happens to be middle C, which is nice. Slip it underneath there while the action's in, and you press the key, and you get, that first third, slightly more than a third of travel before the damper lifts. You want to space it out between the start of the key and the feeling of let off, right in between, in the middle of those two things, those two events. So you push the key, you get to the let off. You want the damper lift to be somewhere right in the middle of that action. Then, once you have that, you come down here and you can see it. Let me zoom. That one is slightly up. That's the one we're going to be adjusting to. It doesn't look like much, but that should give us just enough clearance that when we have the studs, we have the hammer line, and we have the pedal right, like I was talking about earlier, that little bit of clearance right there is going to make the touch with the damper lift just right. All right, with much work and adjustments and annoyance and back pain, we are now left with this. When I push the keys down, I get a nice, right about there, and the keystroke is where the dampers lift. When I hold the pedal down, right, just at the very loudest do you get any actual movement from the damper, and that's really just kind of the key being thrown into the bottom of the damper lever. It did require me to go under the piano to come up under here and adjust the capstan there above the sustain pedal. Get the sustain pedal to where you want it, right? Adjust the capstan up to get the length of travel that you want. The capstan does stop the lever, so it's not just there for safety. It does stop the lever from moving, so you adjust it to where you want the lift to start, and then you adjust the capstan to where you want the lift to stop. Now I could have done that from the beginning, right? I could have just upped the capstan to get the dampers to lift higher with the pedal. Just adjusting the capstan on the damper lever up to get the dampers to lift higher doesn't address where the glides were, the lack of touch in the keys, and also the low hammer line. So all those things came together to give us a significant problem. Adjusting the capstans up on the hammer line, that takes a little bit of time, not so great for your back. Adjusting the damper lift also to go with that, really bad for your back. And I'm exaggerating, but still. And then the other adjustments with the glides and the sustain pedal to match. Now we've got something. And I still have to tune. Let's get to it.